principles with debt reduction.
Okay,
So,
very good. So, a couple different questions there, and I'm going to one answer the question: is there such a thing as good debt? Because some people might think that there is no such thing as good debt, and I probably have a little bit different opinion on that. I believe that good debt is going to be something that is going to appreciate, means that it's going to go up in value. So, I would rather see somebody making payments on a home rather than feeling like they have to save to buy the home outright with cash.
have fun renting for 30 years.
Yeah, because with that, they're going to get the value of the growth of that home. And so, yes, I believe good debt is something that appreciates. And so it could be you're starting a business and it's going to help you provide income. That might be a reason that you need debt. A house or a rental, those are also reasons that you could be also have to have a debt. Probably the last thing, and I don't love this because my wife and I, we personally never bought a car ever, even in the beginning, because we drove some junkers. We drove some real junkers, but we personally never bought a car that we had to make payments on. Yeah. But my son, when he went into the military, he didn't live on base, and he had an older vehicle, and it was one that I encouraged him that if you don't show up on time, you're considered AWOL. That's a little bit more serious than being late. Yeah. And so I was like, you better have something reliable. And him, I encouraged it, but it was a very, very small payment, easy for him to make to do it. So that would probably be at the only time I would encourage a debt.
And some of those interest rates out there are so low right now that it could make sense to go that route. So,
it could. It really could, especially if you have a chance, especially with the COVID thing. Some of the car sales are down so much that you can go out and find these incredible deals where they're less than 1% or less than 2% on for an auto loan. But again, I don't love that. But if you have the choice of getting to work reliable to keep your job, maybe it's necessary.
Yeah. And I forgot to tell you guys at the beginning that we were planning to go till 8:15, so hopefully you're not just looking at your clock being like, it's after 8, we got another 10 minutes or so to get through this. So sorry I forgot to tell you on the front end, and hopefully you're finding this useful and valuable. But let's keep cruising with this.
Perfect. So one other thing I would encourage people who own their own homes right now, if they have a loan that is several years old, they may want to actually look right now and see if now's a good time to refinance, because interest rates are now back to all-time lows. And if you can increase or decrease your interest rate, which will decrease your payment, it may be a good time. Now, there's a lot of other factors. I just wanted to bring that up as a point, and so you can talk to somebody if you feel like, how do I evaluate whether it's a good opportunity to refinance my home or not. But that's something I think people should take a look at if your interest rate is probably higher than 5 or 6%, especially if it gets up there. But the last thing I'm going to do is talk about debt snowball effect to get things paid off. And so, Tyler, if we can go to the paying off debt slide. Perfect. Thank you. So what we're going to look at doing is we're going to look at a snowball principle. And many times when I was younger, before I really understood the debt snowball principle, is that I would say, what is the highest interest rate? And I'll pay that off first. But it's actually not what you want to do. You actually want to list your debts and pay off the lowest value of your debt. So the debt you have the least amount that you owe, you want to pay that off first. And mathematically, you're going to pay that off faster. So in our current situation, if you go to the next slide there, Tyler, we have these different debts. We got a home, we got credit card 1, we have a student loan, a car loan, and a credit card 2. So I don't even list interest rates on here because those are not a critical factor. The only time interest rates might be a factor is if you have two debts that are very close in terms of how much you owe, within maybe a couple $1,000s, then choose the one that's the higher interest rate. But otherwise, let's just say you're going through this and you really, really determined that I'm going to not eat out for a while. I'm going to do these other things to save because I'm really tired of these debts. They're dragging me down and it's difficult. And so let's say you have $150 a month that you can start paying down the debt. So in the Next slide here, we're just gonna, actually I probably kind of went through this a little bit faster, but yes, that's the right slide, Tyler. So let's see on the loan, so we've ranked our loans here from the lowest to highest, and so credit card one has a debt of $5,000 and it has a minimum payment of $150. And we've indicated that we have an extra $150. And so what I don't want you to do is to spread out $40 across all these and pay them all down a little bit. That's not going to help you get your debt paid off fastest. The fastest way you can do it is apply all of it to the smallest loan. And so you have the first debt there, $150 a month is your minimum payment. We're going to apply another extra $150, and we're going to pay $300 a month until that card is paid off. If we go to the next slide, we're going to keep moving through these. So on the last one, when we were paying a total of $300 a month, we're going to take, now that we don't have that first credit card, we're going to take everything that we were paying, the regular payment plus the extra payment, that's $300. So we're going to apply that $300 now in addition to the $250 minimum on that card. So we're going to pay a total of $550 a month until that one is expired. And we'll move on to the next slide here as we just kind of go through this. Again, now we've expired two of those. We actually have an extra $550 a month that we're going to apply to that, and we're going to pay that one off as well. So we're going to skip forward just a couple because we'll do the same thing on the student loan. And then it gets basically to the house mortgage. And what I didn't indicate in here is that we're going to necessarily pay the house off right away here. What's going to determine about whether we really want to pay the house off, I think some of it is going to be interest rates. If we have an interest rate that is 3.5% or anything lower than 4%, we may choose to really start building up our investment accounts, or at least here we want to, at very minimum, get our emergency fund built up. And this is the point in time where I would encourage you to start working on the emergency bucket, because this home loan is going to take a while to get paid off. So that one I'm leaving more discretionary for you to choose on how to do that. And so again, we would probably first of all go to building up our emergency fund, and then we would start working on our longer term savings accounts.
Yes. That's good stuff. Quick question on refinancing. If you bought a house maybe in 2010, 2011, and you still own that home, interest rates were really low in that time frame. When does it make sense to refinance with what your current interest rate is? When is it worth it, so to speak?
You're going to hear different answers on this.
Okay.
A lot of times people say that your interest rate needs to drop by 1% to make it worthwhile. I don't necessarily subscribe to that same theory. What I subscribe to is take your total cost that it's going to cost you. You're going to have title, you're going to have a broker cost, you're going to have some other fees in there. And let's say your total cost is $2,500 or $3,000 to get that refinance. Well, take that $3,000, and if it lowers your payment by $250 a month, take that $3,000 divided by $250 a month, and that'll tell you how many months it will take for you to break even for that extra expense. And so if you plan on living in that home longer than it takes to recover that, I think it makes sense. So
that's a great answer. That makes a ton of sense to me too. Okay. So get out your calculator, do the math, and make the decision.
Exactly.
So, well, great. And yeah, I think people who find freedom in debt reduction just have so many more opportunities for them. So I love that snowball and the graphs there, and I hope that was helpful to all of you. Last thing to talk about just for a few minutes is just in general, when is a person ready to make long-term investments, retirement, those sorts of things, and what are some guiding principles for that?
So that's going to be another really interesting question, but when is the best time to start? Is when you have the money. So
makes sense to me.
You can start with your kids if they're. You can start teaching them principles of saving, of delayed gratification. One of the things that we used to do with our kids when they're little, they did not appreciate this very much but what we do is we would have them set aside some money for their tithe first, and we would have them do kind of a longer term savings and a short term savings. But on their short-term savings, I mean, we walk into the store, every time we came out, there was something they wanted to buy, and I've got some money, I want to buy this. Well, if it was over a certain dollar amount, maybe if it was over $10, we say, you got to wait a week, or most of the time, if it was very expensive, like it was like they wanted to buy a new video game stuff, we say, you got to wait 30 days. If you still want this in 30 days, then you can go back and get it. But I tell you, my wife and I applied the same principle to ourselves, because we went to the fair one year and they had these massage chairs at the fair, and like, oh my goodness, these are crazy. These are so fantastic. But we said, you know what? We'll think about this, and if we still want it a year later, then we'll come back and buy this. And so again, starting young is going to help you. And the reason starting young helps is because it's like if you've ever made a snowman and you're building the snowball, you remember how quickly that snowball got big so quickly. And if you start young, it's like starting that first snowball with a hill, and you're starting up the hill and you're using gravity, and that gravity is compound interest, and you're using that time-wise to help you get there. So if we start later, which many of us do because we're young, we're going to live forever, and there's a whole bunch of other things vying for our time, you're starting that snowball farther down the hill, which means you're going to have to save a larger percentage. But if you're young, I would say if you can do this, try to get this as soon as possible. And it's an 80-20 rule. Basically, it's going to be tithe 10% or give 10%. I know the New Testament is grace giving, but that's a place that I would say a tribute to start, and giving to the Lord first and foremost. Then paying yourself the 10%. That means that's going to be putting in some type of savings, and hopefully after you get your emergency fund, it's going to be in towards long-term savings. That is what's going to help you get to retirement, and then you get the freedom to live off the other 80%. However you wish. And so I think that is going to be the biggest deal. Every time you get a raise at work, maybe you don't need the whole raise. Maybe a portion of that helps increase the amount that you're putting into your 401k or your IRA or something like that. And the last thing I say is just be consistent. And if you have for some reason you have to stop it again as soon as you can.
Nice. If someone had a couple extra $100 and they were starting out, what would you say would be most important? Would it be emergency? Would it be debt reduction, or would it be retirement? Which one would you start with?
And that very first slide that we went to about the cash management, that's going to have more illustrations and an explanation there. But first and foremost, it's going to be getting at least some money into your emergency fund. Okay. That way, if anything happens, you have some money. So that first $2,000 to $5,000 is by far number one. Okay. Number two is going to be debt reduction. Okay. Number three is getting that emergency fund back up to where it should be. And then number four is going to be keeping that emergency fund. Now we get to start on retirement.
Gotcha. And debt reduction up until the house.
Yeah, up until the house. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Amazing things, Michael. So helpful. I hope it was helpful for you all. And that's all we have for tonight. So thanks for joining us with our roundtable discussion. And we'll have another one next week, as Jen will be doing one on mental health, which is so important all the time, but especially during this season. And then we'll have one more after that. So, and please join us with our services. We have services at 9 and 11 right here at instar.live. Please invite your friends and help spread the word. And we're praying for you. If you need any more updates on where we are with regathering and everything happening with COVID, check mstar.church, and all the info is there in the blog. And thank you for doing what you do to lead people to pursue a Jesus-first life. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.